Welcome back to Midnight Film Society bonus-sode. Today's guest is Cameron Kunzelman, Assistant Professor of Communication Studies, Theater at Mercer University. He's also an author. Newest book is The World is Born from Zero, Understanding Speculation and Video Games. He's also a podcaster. His podcasts include Game Study Buddies, Shelved by Genre, Just King Things, and others. Welcome to the show, Cameron.
Hello. How are you?
Doing good. How are you doing?
Doing great.
Doing good? Okay.
Living life?
Living the life, yes. How's the weather down there? It's pretty warm up here.
It's 1 billion degrees. It's awful.
Yes.
It's like
yes.
truly terrible.
Yes, it's really awful. I'm in Massachusetts, so we had I think we were inside the heat dome. I'm not sure if you were inside or outside the heat dome recently.
We were in the heat dome. Now we are receiving they have like a fun, I think they're called aero storms or something like that of the heat dome, which is, I think that's what my local weather people called it. It is when I think cold air hits the heat dome from the sides. Mm-hmm. And they due to the way the heat dome works, they don't penetrate into the heat dome, so they whip around the exterior. And they blast, they kind of do the slingshot maneuver around the side.
Yes.
And so they're like incredibly brutal straight line winds. And so we've had those the past several days as well. So we had the heat dome, and then now post heat dome, bad time.
Yes, I think I remember you talking about that in the Under the Dome Just King Things episode. I believe that was featured in that.
That's right, not Kingcast.
Sorry, Just King Things.
Get that out of here. I know. I just want
Just King Things. Yes, that is
when
your
there's
show.
80 people doing the same thing, you gotta really
gotta specify which one is which. Yes,
that's right.
So let's start off with you do, like I said, you do a few different podcasts. Why don't we kick it off with Game Study Buddies? I found the show through Shelved by Genre. Also Walker mentioned it on one of his podcasts. Game Study Buddies started with Michael Lutz, your co-host on there. Tell me about the impetus for it, why you started it, what's sort of the goal of the show?
Ooh, why did we do that? That's a really interesting question. Michael, we've told the story in various places, and so it's one of those things where every time you tell it, it must therefore like change in some amount of, you know what I mean? Like it's always an interesting thing to think about. And so the best of my memory as of 2026, when I'm saying this today,
yes,
basically Michael and I were both on the other end of we didn't know if we would continue in the careers that we had been preparing for the previous decade, right?
Yeah.
We didn't really know one another all that well. I mean, we had a conversation about the show, and that's like kind of how we picked up. But the last time I tried to do this, I actually got everything way out of order. So Range Touch kind of begins formally with Danny and I doing Mages and Murder Dads, which is about the Baldur's Gate games. And that's on YouTube. You can go to youtube.com/rangetouch to check that out. And that's just us playing through those games and talking about them. And I believe out of that, Michael and I then began Too Much Future. And then we also, which is us doing that for the Fallout games. And then out of that, I believe we began doing Game Study Buddies. And that might not be true. But that is my memory today of the order of things. And someone else, of course, can go and figure that out for true. But the point being for that is we thought maybe we were both completing our PhDs in very different areas. Michael is an early modernist / Shakespearean. I am a, let's say, media theory person, for lack of a better term. And we just were talking about books and talking about and realizing that the kind of stuff we were interested in, the kind of conversations we wanted to have around like big, interesting books, particularly in game studies, that show didn't exist. You know what I mean? And really kind of there have been several shows to kind of emerge and then go on hiatus or not continue over the time that we've been doing Game Study Buddies, but we're still kind of the only spot in town for doing the particular thing we do, which is read books of academic game studies and have a kind of uninterrupted 90-minute to 3-hour conversation about it in the same way that you would in, say, like a graduate seminar, just people talking about the thing and talking about where the ideas came from and what they are. And a lot of people kind of characterize the show as making these things accessible, and that might even have been language that we have used in the past. I don't know, but that really isn't the goal. Really, the goal of it is, and I'm glad that happens if it happens for people.
Yeah.
I'm not mad if that would occur. But that really isn't the goal. The goal is to have a kind of conversation that enlivens the books for everyone who might be interested in that, whether it's people who have a background in this and have a part of the academic study of games, or if it's just people who want to know like what the hell is going on. I find it bizarre when I see people in the game design field. Occasionally someone on social media will be like, what are some podcasts that are good for game design? And inevitably 4 or 5 people will be like, well, have you checked out Game Study Buddies? And I'm glad that if you're in the field of game design, I'm glad that if you find the show helpful, I would find it completely orthogonal to my desires as a game designer. But obviously people are finding it helpful. So that's neat and cool. And so we did that with the expectation that we wanted to continue to engage with interesting ideas from the intellectual or around the intellectual study of games.
Yeah.
But we might not ever have that opportunity again, right? Like, we did not, we just didn't know where our careers were going to go. And my career has warped its way back around into teaching in academia in a way that is a little bit surprising. I didn't think that would happen. It just kind of ended up occurring. The stars aligned in a particular kind of way, and I worked hard and did all the things you're supposed to do, right? But there are lots of people who work hard and work even harder than I did and do all the things you're supposed to do and do even more things you're supposed to do, and it doesn't work out for, right? It's a capricious field that is in no way a meritocracy, much like all other professional fields, right? So I've worked my way back around to it, but really, we did the show in order to have those kind of high-level conversations about what's going on with games in the world, and how do they work, and how do they function, and what are the kind of academic specialties that speak to that in a public way, and also a little bit to push on those things, right? Like anyone who's ever been involved in academia or the study of anything, right, knows that in the classroom setting, you'll talk a little trash. You'll be like, what's going on with this? Why would anyone do that? And that, because of the way that academia functions, you're discouraged from doing that, right? You're discouraged from being like, these people I know who I really like, they have ideas I think are bad, right? And so there was a little bit of like, well, since we're out the door, it kind of doesn't matter. And so we've said many things on the shows, that like in the fullness of time, probably should just kept to myself. But on the other hand, I think that's actually really valuable because there's a kind of interior conversation in academia about what do you think is a good source? What do you think, or what does your field think, or what does your subdiscipline think about how one makes an argument, and what do those look like? And, all that kind of how the sausage is made stuff that kind of requires you to be sometimes critical or sometimes just full of praise. You know what I mean? Above and beyond what the work is. You just like it a lot, and your enjoyment helps propel you forward, right? Like, it's an emotive field like anything else. And so I really enjoy doing the show because we get to do that thing still, right? Like once you've done it a few times, you might as well just keep going. I'm sure there are people who have listened who have not been happy with that. I know for a fact it's cost me professional opportunities before. Oh, wow. But in the fullness of time, I think that was worthwhile because it humanizes these books and humanizes the people involved and humanizes us too. I don't have a lot of patience for the academic from on high who makes the proclamations about reality, right? Like it's all pretty messy. So that's a long answer to the question, but that's what Game Study Buddies is about, I think, probably.
It's a really fascinating show. One thing I noticed, and you can tell me if this perception is totally off, the early you bounce around between books from the 80s through more current books, and my idea going into it was, the books from the 80s are going to be rudimentary in a way that they talk about games, and books from now are going to be much more complex and much more intricate because games over time have become much more complex and intricate. And that's not really the case, is it? That game study books and game academia books are simply talking about play, and play doesn't really change much over time, even when we're talking about games that become much more complex than they used to be.
Yeah, certainly our models haven't changed all that much, right? Like maybe play. Those kinds of statements are always like, well, I don't know, you know what I mean? Like my academic brain turns on and goes, well, maybe play changes. It's all material in the world. It's all
Yeah.
about like how one relates to culture, which changed, all that kind of stuff. But I think the core of the point that I really do agree with is that our models of play, right? Which is to
Hmm.
say, like the way that we say that play kind of inherently functions and works is one of the things that seems relatively unchanged going back at least into the era where like on the show we have some expertise, which is like the 1500s, we'll say, right? And so we kind of consistently, we just did a book that was about play in the 16th and 17th centuries. And we've read books all throughout that point, right? And
Hmm.
the way that they define the human relationship to play tends to it seems to have accreted into a particular kind of form, right? You know what I mean? Like that's maybe the best you could say. It's not universal, but it's pretty consistent. And so that means that when people in the 70s, 1970s are writing these books, or the 1980s, or the 1990s, or the early 2000s, or now, right? When they go to find a big theory of play, everyone tends to go a little bit earlier than them. And you can, over the course of the nearly 100 episodes we've done now, I think I have a pretty good idea of like how that daisy chains back really, really far in, let's say, like in European history. I'm not a global theorist of play. I don't have a model of it that well, but I do have a pretty good sense of the Anglophone world and how we've dealt with it in Western Europe as well.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think you're right. I think that's, I think what is a tragedy of the history of game studies is a field or a concern or an interest that people have. And game studies is done by people everywhere, right? It's done
Hmm.
by people who you would call a game studies scholar. It's done by anthropologists. It's done by psychologists. It's done by sociologists. It is done by traditional literature scholars. It's done by media folks, film studies people. There are a lot of film studies work on play. Um, and then everywhere else, right?
Yeah.
To the point where like you end up with some people in the hard sciences doing some work around play too, and certainly philosophy has a long history there. And but what's interesting is because even now, play and game studies are not really coherent fields. You can pick up a game or you can pick up a book published this year
Hmm.
in game studies, and you will find a slice of game studies, right? A particular kind of lineage that author thinks that they're responsive to, and
Yeah.
and you will not find a whole host of other things that have been happening since the 1970s or 1980s. And I don't say that to say that like that those scholars that there's a problem or anything like that. I've written two books. I chose my own little slice too, right, for each of those when I'm talking about games.
Hmm.
But the thing to point out to and to go back to your original kind of provocation, right, is that we have all of these different strains that have a kind of shared core of like what's up with play.
Hmm.
And then every decade or so, we end up with this different cluster and different sets of disciplines who take that question of play and games and really bloom out into their own thing. And then seemingly a few years later, another group comes along that mostly ignores that work and then does their own thing. And so the history of play and the history of games is so much more staccato and kind of shotgun blasted all around than basically any other field I've ever been involved in. It's really and truly quite strange. And the show, I think, has allowed us to really experience that. And you can hear us on the show experiencing that, fairly regularly.
You do, yeah. Just speaking to the sort of reason you started the show, you said it wasn't really to make it more accessible to people, but you are also an assistant professor. And so I was curious about how you've seen, I'm not sure how long you've been a professor for, but I was wondering if the students you teach, how much have you seen their sort of a way that they engage with play and how they engage with what you're teaching them change over time? I guess my question is, are the kids all right? Are they going to be, is the future of game studies, is the future of game making, and teaching about this stuff and learning about this stuff and engaging with this stuff through your students that you teach, how have you seen them sort of engaging with this stuff over time?
Yeah, that's always really tricky. You never want to put the academic hat on, right?
Mm.
God forbid. But it's like, well, what's the sample I have,
Yeah.
right? And I'm very I would not trade my job for any other job, right? Like I'm
Yeah.
at the right size institution. I get to, and I work in such a capacity with students and teach in such a way with groups of students that it's the thing I like about academia and none of the parts I don't like, or at
Mm.
least a minimal number of the things I don't like about academia, right? I am very free to do whatever research I want to do. I am not under, I'm not, for example, pushed upon by my institution to chase grants. And I've like been part of that before, right? And that changes the way you have to do scholarship. And so I mostly at this point teach students in around games when I'm teaching games classes because I'm in a department of communication in theater, and I teach comm courses, and so I teach a big host of stuff. My PhD was in moving image studies, was my specialty, my kind of specialization within my department. But I got a degree in communication, a PhD in communication. I took all the core stuff around that, right? I took courses on rhetoric and communication and media widely. And so sometimes I find myself being a generalist, right? And sometimes I find myself being the specialist that I am, which is teaching on games or science fiction, right? Those are the two kind of things I really hone in on. Which is all to say that even during my PhD, I was teaching courses in game history and game design and stuff like that. So I've probably been teaching, once a year, a class on games to between 30 and 60 students in a class, right? Depending on where I was and what time it was, for about a decade, right? My sample size is small, but it's a relatively similar sample size over a long period of time. So that gives you at least some information. And so the thing I would say is that, and it's a thing that anyone who's paying attention to like games culture could also tell you too. Games are, the world of games is more ubiquitous. It's everywhere. Everyone is playing all the time, right? Is more ubiquitous and less predictable than ever before. Which is to say that I've taught many students over the past couple years, when teaching pretty heavily about games, who you'll do the classic experiment with them, or the classic like first day of class where you're like, hey, raise your hand if you consider yourself to be like a gamer, and you'll get like a fifth of the people or a quarter or whatever, because that's an embarrassing word still. No one likes to be the gamer, right? But some people want to be the gamer, and so they raise their hand. And then you go, well, how many of you here play a game for more than 10 hours a week? And then you get more hands. And then you're like, well, and you pick a random person out in the crowd and you go, you're telling me you don't play anything on your phone for more than 10 hours a week? And then they'll be like, well, I do play Subway Surfers a lot or whatever, right? Whatever their game is. And you're like, all right, well, that's a game. And they're like, I guess. And so then, over the course of, whatever, 10 minutes or so, you get basically everyone's hand up. And the exercise in the classroom is to be like, you don't know that you are playing all the time, but you are. You've just put it into this other kind of slot in your head, of just things I do while I'm waiting for other things to happen. Historically, you would do that exercise and it would kind of cohere around particular objects, right? So it would be, even just a couple years ago, it would be Subway Surfers. It would be Super Mario. It would be playing Uno with your family. It would be something, right? Where you could kind of get out of everyone here. How do you engage with play? And everyone would have these clusters of shared activities, whatever they are, right? Over the past couple of years, that's really become less predictable, and I find that interesting. Which is to say that like I will have a cluster of people who are like, I play the new 2K when it comes out, and that's it. That is the only game I'm even aware of. I do not know there's other games. Or the ubiquity of a Call of Duty, right? There was a time when when you're like, look, one of my first falls that I was at the institution I'm at currently, I was in a meeting where we learned that we had to upgrade some of our infrastructure, like our internet infrastructure on campus, because a new Call of Duty patch came out that was a new Warzone patch came out that was too big, and it like hard locked the residential dorms like internet, because the bandwidth was just like being pushed on too hard, right? That just doesn't seem to be the case anymore. There's no it's really hard to find shared texts. There was a time where I could say Subway Surfers and it would be 75% of the people in there. It's
Candy
really not
Crush.
that case anymore. Yeah, it's really, really difficult. There are a lot more people playing tabletop games now, but those worlds don't cross whatsoever.
Hmm.
So I have a cluster of students. I just taught a big analog, I co-taught with a colleague, a big analog games class last fall. And in that room, there were people who played digital games and people who played tabletop games, and there was basically no overlap
Oh, wow.
in things they were aware of. And so yeah, subculture. Yet again, we live in a big, weird monocultural time. The monoculture of our current moment is simply algorithmic suggestion.
Yep.
And subcultures are blooming in a way that are more hard barriered, it seems like, than before. And again, my sample size is small. Someone who teaches 300 people in a big seminar, or not, I guess you can't do it in the seminar, in a large lecture, every semester is actually going to have a lot more data than I do. But what I can see is more play, but more fractured and less shared than ever before.
Yeah.
It's pretty wild.
It is wild. Just to sort of use this as a pivot point, you were talking on the latest episode of the Shelved genre about the Lord of the Rings, and you were mentioning you showed class Tarkovsky's one of the Stalker, the scene in Stalker, the train scene. And I think you mentioned you felt they were disengaging at about the 2 minutes points, right?
Oh yeah, they were so over it. Like literally, people rolling their eyes like 90 seconds in. Yeah.
Yeah. What was your sort of going into it? Were you anticipating that? Were you sort of hoping, okay, this is exactly what I was expecting, or were you kind of taken aback by that?
Oh no, if you teach anyone today, right?
Yeah.
If you do any kind of teaching, and I think this is agnostic of what age group you're working with. I think there's a lot of like Gen Z panic in the world. I've had the benefit of teaching people who were substantially older than I was, people who were functionally my same age. I mean, I was teaching solo in the classroom a year after I graduated from college, right?
Yeah.
So like these people are functionally my age, right?
Yeah.
I'm just teaching my peers, and now I'm teaching, Gen Z, people who are about a decade. No, more than a decade, 15 years younger than I am at this point. So I've had the ability to do this. And no, since the advent of like everyone having a cell phone, people's attention spans are shot, right? And I don't mean that in a moral panicky way. It's just descriptively, right? I have many people that I engage with all the time, right? Like people that I'm at a bar with, people I'm I was at a conference recently. Got to have this experience. You go to a big work meeting, you see this stuff. They can pay attention for about 4 solid minutes, and then people just get on their phone and start doing whatever, right? And it's always there. And I will say that my students are definitely more aware of it than my colleagues are, right? Like they are much more canny about my phone is harming me and I need to put that thing down, or I need to lock it away, or I need to put it into a different room. They're much more open about talking about strategies they have for dealing with that, of putting timers on, just saying like, I'm going to put my phone face down across the room so it's not within hand's reach.
Yeah.
And I will watch a movie for half an hour. At the half an hour mark, I'll take a phone break, and then I'll start the movie again. I've had several students. Every time I teach a course on visual rhetoric that is pretty heavy movie, documentary, whatever based. And like we talk about strategies for paying attention, and they're so much more open with it than basically any other age group I know. So that's beneficial. But yeah, so I knew that they would like resent Stalker, you know, and this was after theoretically they'd supposed to be watching it for homework, right? And some of them did, some of them didn't.
Yeah.
That's about par for the course for attorney for homework. So I don't have any moral panic about it, but it does mean that like when you think about what is the world, right? And like in your mind, when you say, how do people engage with stuff? I do not have the most data of people, but I certainly have more data than like a lot of other people I know do, right? Like I'm engaging with hundreds of 18 to 20-year-olds constantly and talking to them and having fairly honest conversations about how they engage with the world. And so, and let me tell you, I went and saw Stalker when the remaster came out, when the Criterion disc came out. I went and saw it in a movie theater and saw a lot of people whipping their phones out.
Oh my God.
So, I don't, it's not locked into one particular group, but, but it does mean you have to like change your model of what you think the world is. Right. I think the number of people who are putting their phone down and watching, for example, a 2.5-hour movie all the way through, Shorter than Stalker, by the way, but even a short movie as short as 2.5 hours, that's just exceedingly rare, right?
Yeah.
Like, and it's got to change the way you think the world works.
Unfortunately, yeah, you're right about that. So speaking of movies and podcasting, you embarked on a pretty ambitious project this year, the year of the Lord of the Year. You're engaging with all of the works of John Ronald Tolkien, as you colloquially call him.
Yeah.
So I have to, first of all, I'm curious about, the decision to embark on this project. Tell me about, like, because your co-hosts, Austin Walker and Michael Lutz are also part of the show. Just tell me about sitting down and saying, okay, guys, the next year of our lives is going to be the Lord of the Rings. How do we feel about that? Tell me about the conversations. Tell me about the planning. How did that all sort of come about?
I don't know. I think Austin pitched it. We might have talked about it in the first episode of the year, but I can't remember now. I think Austin might have pitched it to us as like, because it keeps coming up, right? So Shelved by Genre, for people who haven't listened to it, you can go and do that right now if you want to. Come back later. Go listen to the 3 years of show and then come back.
Yes.
But on Shelved by Genre, right, we engage with works of genre literature, and overwhelmingly that has been we call them units, and they tend to be, they have historically, except for one instance, have been single author focused, and we'll do 2 or 3 or 4 works by that author in a row, or sometimes more, I guess, with the idea of saying, like, the genre that they're engaged in. So mostly for us, that's fantasy and science fiction with some occasional runs in different directions. What's this author doing? How are they doing it? What time are they doing it in? And what does that look like? And so sometimes that involves a lot of extra research that we do around that. Sometimes it doesn't. And I think probably the reason that whoever suggested, I think it was Austin. I think probably the reason that Tolkien was suggested and why we all went, oh yeah, let's do it. Probably for a couple of reasons. And like, material conditions are always a thing that are worth thinking about. One is Tolkien keeps coming up in everything, like Earthsea. We read Le Guin's Earthsea cycle. Earthsea is partially in response to Tolkien, despite Le Guin constantly saying that's not true. If not, it is the most miraculous set of things I've ever seen occur. And I think to her point is it's not, she did not want to be reduced to, I'm responding to Tolkien, right? And so one of the ways you do that is you disperse the whole thing, right? Which is very reasonable. I totally get it. So it comes up there. It comes up with Book of the New Sun, which is the Gene Wolfe series that we started the show with. And it's come up several other times too. And so I think part of it was just, this comes up enough that what if we just tackled the whole thing? And tackling the whole thing really quickly would be really hard. I'm glad that we're taking our time with it. I think we've had the ability to sit with some sections of these books that if we were doing them more quickly, we probably just wouldn't have talked about them, And so I have a much firmer, we're about 2/3 of the way. No, I guess we're halfway through the year right now, but we're like, I don't know, a little bit short of that, I guess. We're probably 40% through the actual content of the Lore of the Year. And so I'm glad that we're able to do that. And I'm getting an appreciation of them that I wouldn't have had before. So that's one. The other one is that Michael had a baby in the fall. And so we have to look for ways to be efficient and ways to not harm his schedule. He's working from home. He's a dad. He's taking care of his baby. Other people are involved, of course, but he's heavily involved. He's not going to the podcast factory every day and then clocking out at 5 and then showing up. And so the kind of show that we do, I think is much easier when you don't have a baby. Like you can really dig through the archive and you can do all the research stuff that we do. And we do more research for the show than shows up, right? There's all kinds of times where I'm reading a book, especially this year, I'm reading a book about Tolkien and I'm getting 50% in and I go, well, none of this is showing up on the show. And that's harder to do, when we're moving through 5 units a year or whatever, right? It just becomes a higher burden. So a little bit was to catch a break from, to allow Michael to catch a break and to really be able to focus his attention on this thing which he was gonna, do awesome at. I think one of the really great things about Shelved by Genre is that each of us kind of do a different kind of thing. We all have different expertise. We engage in different kinds of questions. We read in different ways. We sometimes will hit, and there's good overlap too, where like Michael and I read for a particular kind of like clever literary trick. I think that Austin and I are much more willing to like read some words on the page and just be pumping our fists and get like super hyped up about the words on the page, where Michael's a little bit more of an austere critic, right? Like he'll get excited, but he's a little bit more, I think, always able to objectify and contextualize whatever's in front of him. He's a much better close reader than I am, I would say. And so that's maybe another reason that Tolkien came up, is like we knew it would be fruitful, for all three of us to engage with it in the different ways that we do. So there's some real material concerns and reasons, and then there's some more just like, I think it'll be fun, I think it would work out, I think it would be interesting.
And just in general, you've talked about this in the show while you're doing it, but just the act of going through it, I think you've said in the show that's been a very long time since you've read the books. How are you finding them? Reading them yourself? And then something that I do on my show when I'm talking about a movie I've just seen is be talking about it, and I realize, hey, I actually found a lot more to like about the thing now that I'm talking about it. Or the other way, I might find that I don't like as much as I thought I did. How much of the takeaway from the show, doing the show and doing the rereads, are you coming away from them higher, more positive on the books, about the same or less? How have you found that experience?
That's a tricky question to answer, because I think part of the issue with like, that's easy when you're reading, say, Brown Girl in the Ring. And if people have not read Brown Girl in the Ring, I strongly recommend that. If you just take the recommendation, post-apocalypse, Toronto, woman has a baby, and there is kind of Caribbean magic stuff afoot.
Yeah,
that's all you need to know. Okay. Go read the book. You know what I mean? Like just straightforward recommendation for people. This is Nalo Hopkinson's book. So like, that's an easy book to be like, I was aware of the book, all this kind of stuff we talk about on the show, and then you read it in this conversation, and over the course of conversation, you find all these nooks and crannies in the thing, right? The way that Austin is reading the kind of deadbeat dad character who like kind of makes good in some ways, right? Like the way he reads that character is different from the way I read that character. The way that we all are reading the grandmother character is different. Like we're seeing these different aspects to her. And so they kind of bounce off each other like, I don't know, like billiard balls, right? And then you come out going like, this book was really good, and actually it's better than I thought it was. There's a real heightening effect when you have something that's so big, or similar deal with Book of the New Sun, right? Which is like, probably in terms of like people arguing on the show, we argued with each other the most in that series, right? About like how to read things, right? Interpret things. I think Austin and I like really like a couple times kind of got heated, right? Yeah. In a positive way, right? Like everyone is friends. It's the kind of thing you get heated about at the bar, right? It's not the kind of thing you get heated about and end up in jail. Right. But but that like heightens, right? That gives you more, and that sharpens your kind of thoughts and ideas about the book. Tolkien is really tricky because like, I think we all are enjoying it in our own way. I think that we are all coming to a higher, or not a higher, into a more profound depth, right? Like a more appreciation of the thing. Yeah. But I also think that part of the method of the show that we engage with all the time, right, is like, you have to get rid of the person in your head that tells you the art is this crystalline object that's there for you to access outside of time and space. Yeah. Right? Like Tolkien wrote it in sequence. He went back and edited, but you can really tell the pieces. If you know any of the history of the production of the thing, you can feel the seams. Like you can see where he starts and stops. When you read the letters, you can see him doing a kind of like his own retcon, right? That then gets taken up by his son, Christopher Tolkien, which then gets put into the book that Christopher puts together, which is the Silmarillion, and then gets re-articulated across those like 9 volumes of the history of Middle Earth that he did, which is the bigger corpus that some of the Silmarillion gets reduced down from, right? So I think part of, has it made me like it more? Probably not. I mean, they're classics of the genre, but I'm not a person that's read these 30 times,
Yeah.
right? Doesn't make me like them more, but probably makes me appreciate all of those nooks and crannies, all those pieces, all those starts and stops. I am so much more interested in it as a built object, in the way
Yeah.
that I find like a Lego Yoda to be really impressive. And also knowing that like someone knocked the head off the Lego Yoda and then like someone's kid came and put a new head on Lego Yoda.
Yeah.
Like that's interesting too, right?
Yeah.
Uh so yeah, I don't know. I mean, the answer is I don't know.
Yeah.
I think we've had a really great time talking about it. I'm enjoying it. It's not the kind of show where we get together once every 2 year or 2 weeks and then complain about it, right? Like
Yeah.
there's interesting things to say and we really find it useful. But I don't know if I'm going to come out being like, yep, confirmed, Lord of the Rings is the greatest thing ever done.
Right.
I think I'll come out going like, I know so much more about J.R.R. Tolkien's hatred of the Beatles now.
Yeah, that's kind of what I think what I come to the show for, what everyone comes to the show for is, the thing I'm trying to do with my show too is to not come out of anything and saying, yeah, it's great or it's terrible. I think we do podcasts and we talk about this stuff in long form discussions to have those nuances to say like, yeah, I like some of this and I didn't like other things. And in the context of this seems kind of weird. And yeah, I think that's the whole point of the show, right? Is to sit down and say, analyze these things in a critical way and come away saying, yeah, it's as good as you thought it was in some ways, but not as good in others.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's a thing that our culture made. It is in some ways a mirror. And it's a mirror in its moment of production, and it's a mirror in its moment of reception.
Yeah.
And wrestling with all of that and talking about it and being able to do a long form, like you just said, like a long form thought, right? Like at the end of the day, being able to record a podcast, that at this point is, I don't know, like 40 hours so far this year.
Yeah.
Maybe, plus with all the bonus episodes probably.
Yep.
Patreon.com/rangetouch. You gotta get the plug in.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, like 40 to 50 hours somewhere in that zone. And if I wrote about this, for a publication, if someone reached out to me and like this happens with Stephen King stuff occasionally or Tolkien or whatever, right? Post-apocalypse stuff. People reach out and they're like, hey, will you write about whatever? And it's like, well, I guess I get 1,500 words to it's a very different thing, and it's a different endeavor. And I undoubtedly, right, like the world of podcasting reveals this to you. If you're willing to make a show that will bring on one guest from a ongoing movie or television show twice a week, and just say, hey, this thing is really good, the reach for that is still quite large, right? Like that plugs into an industry in a particular kind of way. And I think what's really great about doing Shelved by Genre is we were able to produce a critical and thoughtful and kind of three-dimensional show that has all of the missteps and all of the glory and all the pieces, right, that a human being who is thinking critically in public can do in conversation. We get to make jokes too, right? But you get to have this whole being. You get to be a whole person.
Yeah.
And sometimes you get to just be like, I don't know, I like this and I don't like this other thing and I don't have an explanation why. You get to be a whole person, and you get to be a whole person within a group of people who are there because they appreciate that. And they want to engage with that, as opposed to writing a 1,500-word review or criticism piece or think piece that somehow gets pushed out to like people's Facebook page and you receive targeted harassment for 6 months afterward, right? Like, the ROI on the effort is just, what I mean, is like very stark.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was listening to the show today. You were talking about the so the bonus-odes are the movie. For those that don't listen, the bonus-odes are for the movies, and the regular Shelved by Genres for the books. You do this for Lord of the Rings right now, and you also on Just King Things. You also do it. You're talking about the books, and then bonus-odes are for the movies. Is that correct for the Just King Things as well? Yeah. So today's episode, you were talking about. The Two Towers, the movie Two Towers. The thing I took away from that was that you're not a fan, correct? You weren't.
Yeah, it's not good.
Too up on the Two Towers, and again, I was listening at work, so I was kind of half listening. So correct me if this was brought up. You were talking about, I think it's the difference between the extended and the regular editions of the movies, and I thought you were saying something about Gandalf and the actual meeting between him and Saruman, I thought in the extended, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought in the extended, was it the end of Two Towers or the beginning of Return of the King, where Saruman just like falls off the tower and just lands somewhere and just lands on some spikes? Is that in Two Towers, end of Two Towers?
Yeah, it's in one of the extended editions. I'm not sure which one.
Yeah.
Definitely not theatrical. He just simply disappears.
Just disappears. I was...
He just stopped showing up. Yeah.
I first saw the extended editions, I don't know, 10 years ago or so. And I was like, why is this not in there? Like you said, it was just very bizarre just to be like, yeah, and Saruman was never heard from again, as opposed to showing a, confirmed death. Like, show me the body. I was I don't know if you have any thoughts or feelings about why they left that on the cutting room floor.
I don't know if I can explain. Despite the Jackson films being perhaps some of the most documented movies to ever exist, right? Like, they're up there with Blade Runner in terms of like how many people can talk about this, right? And how many people can like redo an oral history of the particular moment of these movies, which is like good, I guess. Like, I'm not mad that exists. It's very helpful.
Yeah.
But in terms of like actual creative decisions that are made in the movie, I don't know. I think a lot of it has to do with, and this is pure speculation.
Yeah.
I think they're kind of focus group to death.
Yeah.
Movies 2 and 3. I think they really, where Jackson and Boyens, and I'm blanking on the third writer. I'm blanking on her name. But the three writers, of the core team of that trilogy.
Yep.
Whereas, like, Fellowship of the Ring is straightforwardly a melodrama, and that's what makes it so good, right? It's ultimately is a movie about showing extreme close-ups of actors crying and looking at each other, and then the music swells and it tells you how you're supposed to feel about Lost Innocence or Gandalf or whatever, right? And that's good. That works. Like, that's actually a really profound use of I think the tools of melodrama. They give that up. They give that up in the other two movies, and it's partially because they become war films, and it's hard. It's actually not hard to do melodramas of war, but they have no interest in doing it, right? So, like, Ridley Scott is, I think, very good at doing melodramas of war.
Yeah. Kingdom of Heaven.
But they're kind of splitting the difference. I think there's a really, once Weta Workshop, once they proved how good they were with the Fellowship of the Ring, it seems like there was a lot of effort from everyone to say, well, they're really good. Why don't we give them more and more responsibility? Like, let's lean in. And they were able to achieve a scale of combat and warfare and all that kind of stuff in both of those next two movies, in Two Towers and in Return of the King, that was unmatched at the time. They are doing stuff that's very impressive. Technically, it is not stuff that, to me, is impressive now. Right, like the melodrama of the Fellowship of the Ring is still very impressive to me. It is a movie that makes you feel, and does so through very traditional filmmaking tricks, and in that way, really grounds this bizarre, fantastical world in what are very human emotions. And in the Two Towers, there are moments of that are really good. Eowyn looking at Aragorn is a really good one. We talk about that in the episode extensively, but for the most part, it's buried under like dwarf jokes and the stuff, of course, with King Theoden like riding out. Those are the other big good emotional hits, right? And again, that's kind of like zoom in on the guy's face and let him have an emotion, for it. Let an actor act.
Yeah.
But a lot of the movie is like, let's make jokes about dwarfs and let's like zoom in on an orc yelling and threatening a child, and that will be sufficient to make everything go. And I just don't find those parts as interesting. I haven't seen Return of the King theatrical. I think I mentioned that in the episode. I haven't seen the theatrical version of that film in a very long time. Maybe only once or maybe never. Like, I really do wonder if I've never seen it before. And so I'm going to be really surprised by that, or hopefully surprised by that. But I think that second movie and the third movie are, from an editing perspective, from a plot perspective, mostly just kind of a mess. And what's been really surprising after this morning, that episode coming out, because I was like, I could be out on an island here. Like, I don't know if other people feel this way.
Yeah.
People like these movies a lot. And for the most part, I've gotten a lot of people being like, yeah, this movie's not very good. Like at least the theatrical version is obviously the weaker of the two.
Yeah.
And overall, it seems to be a lot of people's least favorite in going back to it. You know what I mean? I think a lot of people, if they watch those movies, you know, the last time they watched them, they were teenagers, they're like, The Two Towers is the good one. But I think, you know, a little bit further on, some of the strength wears out of it. And I think that's all plot and storytelling problems.
Yeah, definitely. You asked for people to commission images on the show. I want to see, an image of like you and in Godfather makeup going, look how they massacred my boy. And it's just Gimli in The Two Towers and those movies.
I mean, you know, those movies just thrash Gimli. If you have never read The Lord of the Rings, listener of this show, if you've never read The Lord of the Rings and you think Gimli is just a little comedy guy in the movies, and that's his whole deal, it isn't. He is like a really profound and interesting character. And you should go check him out. It is worth reading the books just to get the Gimli stuff.
Yes. Yes, it is. Absolutely. I just want to finish up with your other, you have a few different podcasts, but the one I listen to also is Just King Things. You're up to, the last episode was End of Watch. So you're getting pretty close to current day King. I was curious, what is the plan to, when you get caught up? Are you going to restart? Are you going to read Joe Hill books? Has that even been a discussion yet? What's the thinking there?
Restarting is a wild.
Yeah.
That's a wild suggestion that you've made. That's one of the, no, we're not going to do that. I mean, that would be a big move to be like, we're just going to do it until I'm dead. I'm going to read through the cycle of Stephen King books over and over again.
Yeah.
No, I think that would kill me. I think I would die.
Right.
Although, like, that is the interesting thing about other shows, right? Like, I kind of very studiously don't listen to other Stephen King podcasts, partially because, like, you don't want your show to become some weird response show where you're like responding to other people's podcasts about Stephen King. It's a big world out there, and I think what's really great about like the sub world of Stephen King podcasts is there is a show for everybody, right? Like, if you think that Michael and if you listen to a couple episodes and you're like, these people don't got it. And, a lot of people think we're too negative. That's okay. You can feel that way. There's other shows for you, right? And or if you think like The Dark Tower is the be all end all of King, there's more than one podcast I'm given to understand that's about reading the Kingiverse as just The Dark Tower plus some other stuff, right? So like there really is kind of, it seems like a show for everyone for every approach. We have our own thing. It looks different from others. It sounds different from other people's thing. And so, I mean, really the question of like, what happens when you're done? The part of that is like, well, who else is around to do this too, where it would be interesting?
Yeah.
I mean, part of what is so cool, part of what's good about doing a show about Stephen King is that people across their whole lives, across multiple generations, have read a bunch of Stephen King. So there's always kind of an episode for someone, right? Like, for most people, if you read genre literature, you've probably read a Stephen King. So you've got one that you know, and that's a good entryway, right? So like there's always The Stand or an It or a Tommyknockers or whatever, right? For someone to come in. He's also interesting because he is really and truly a bizarre guy. He is one of the few big best-selling American genre writers who very consciously and purposefully changed his craft in the way that he does stuff multiple times.
Yeah.
Right? Like he in the mid-90s, he said, I'm now going to begin writing in a different way. And he did it. And that's just like shout out to John Grisham. He didn't do that. That's not him, right? And also he's a weirdo. That's also the other cool thing about Stephen King is like he'll always say the most bizarre thing on the earth. He'll give an interview where he talks weird. He has he's got the Bachman thing where he like pretended to be a different guy. Like he's just a weird fella. He had one of the truly, and hey, if someone's listening to this and they know of someone who's done this, let me know. But Stephen King's agent for a long time was Kirby McCauley, one of the weirdest guys also to ever be in American fiction. And so I would love to read the biography of Kirby McCauley. If anyone knows of anyone working on that, please let me know.
Mm.
So really, then the question is like, if we will not be looping around and doing King again. And on the show, we've intimated a few times who might be the next person to come up.
Yeah.
But what someone who is, you know, we'll be more explicit as we get closer. But you should just think in American popular genre fiction,
Yeah.
who is just as weird as Steve, wrote in different styles like Steve, engaged with different radical changes over their life like Steve. And there's only a couple answers, and one of those is locked in for sure. So we will not be reading Joe Hill stuff. There's actually been we've had a couple conversations, and I guess this is a like a thing to say on here. No, we're not going to continue with the King line. I don't find that. I think Joe Hill's fine. I don't. I'm very hot and cold on Joe Hill in a way that I'm kind of not with Steve.
Yeah.
There's been a couple of things where I'm just like completely off it, but for the most part, there's always something interesting in a Stephen King book for me. Heart-Shaped Box is a book that I'm so cold on. I don't think I have anything kind to say about it. Right? Like and Joe Hill's done a couple of those, but the short stories, I think he's as good. He's one of the greatest American short story writers. If people have not read Full Throttle or 20th Century Ghosts, those are both great short story collections. I strongly recommend. We've also had discussions though about doing a bonus episode on Tabitha King's books. She wrote, I think, 6 or 7 or 8. She's written quite a few. I don't know if that's going to work out or not, just for a timing issue.
Yeah.
But I think I'm going to read them no matter what, so I can have, you know, some comprehensiveness there. Because she also has like a shared continuity thing going on. It's pretty interesting. And I've been slowly but surely accruing all of her books in hardcover over the past 5 years or whatever, 6 years. So once you start doing that, you got to read them. You know?
Yes, obviously. I just want to close out. Usually ask guests on the show, you know, what's the last best thing you've watched, read, listened to? I know you've got a lot of things on your plate: King books, Lord of the Ring books, study buddy books. Anything you've read that you haven't had a chance to talk about, tweet about, whatever. What's the last great thing you've watched recently?
Did an episode of the ancillary review of books, which is like science fiction. It was a genre literature criticism review website. It's what they do. And Casella Brookins over there does a podcast called A Meal of Thorns, where you get like a critic or an author and they read a book, kind of not at random, but, you know, kind of decided on. And they just talk about it, you know, what's going on with it. So I did an episode of that, I don't know, like a year ago, sometime in living memory.
Yeah.
On Venomous Lumpsucker, which is a cool book. I think people should check it, by Ned Bowman. And in between that book coming out, or in between doing that episode and now, Bowman has released a book under a pseudonym of Kit Burgoyne, which is his like horror fiction pseudonym. It's called The Fugitive is the name of the book. And it kind of got billed as a horror book, and it unquestionably is a horror book, but that's not really the vibe. You know what I mean? Like it's not a gory book really. It doesn't play in that zone. To me, it's a political thriller that uses like the genre constraints of horror to like do its thing. It's really great. I liked it a lot. I think people should check it out. It's called The Fugitive. The short version, or like the log line, is environmental terrorists / activists kidnap the single heir of an evil capitalist family. Okay. And she is in her own version of Rosemary's Baby.
Incredible. That sounds amazing.
And then so it's about the fallout of that. Like what happens then when you know the dominoes start falling through all of that. It's good. It's really good. I enjoyed it a lot. I just read Aaron Osman's biography of Jason Molina, Writing with the Ghost. I thought that was really good. If you like Jason Molina as an artist. I've been listening to a lot of Neil Young. I'm guesting, co-hosting, I don't know, on a thing with Sean McTiernan over at SF Ultra, and we are listening to every Neil Young record in order, and we are covering them all in 4 or 5 episodes, and those episodes are 4 or 5 hours long each. We've done 2 of those. People can check those out, so you can hear the highlights and the lowlights of the Neil Young catalog and what we're doing over there. I don't know, what have you read recently? What have you seen? What have you watched? What's good?
I'm watching so many things. I've read so many things. Going to be interviewing the author of the Last Kings of Hollywood. The author of that, I'm be talking to him. Don't have his name off the top of my head, but for that, I rewatched Hearts of Darkness and just thinking about Coppola as a filmmaker, all those guys as filmmakers. So I was reading through that and watching a bunch of stuff and reading about him. So that's been interesting. What else?
Yeah, I paid like $1 billion American dollars recently to get the Apocalypse Now 4K, which is out of print.
Yes. Oh wow.
Yeah. And yep, definitely felt that one.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking about that stuff in relationship to the Odyssey, which I'm going to see in wherever it's playing in Brooklyn or somewhere, 70 millimeter, all that thing. So I'm really excited to watch that. And, thinking about Coppola and his filmmaking. And I was watching interviews with Matt Damon saying how he's strapped to the front of a boat and because of, he's making the Odyssey. So he's on the front of the boat being transfixed by a siren and been a giant rainstorm on the ocean. I'm just like, yeah, that seems like a Coppola thing to do. It seems like Chris Nolan's sort of reviving the Coppola way of making films, of just throwing actors into treacherous environments and seeing what happens, but in a probably much safer way, one would think.
I mean, I like that Chris Nolan is willing to, he's just like, listen, you want to make a movie, right? You want the movie to be good. Yeah. Great. Come sign on to my project. My newest project is being mad that my kids don't know about anything.
Exactly.
Right? Because that's the past 2 movies. Oppenheimer was like, he tried to talk to his kids about nuclear weapons. They had no idea what he was talking about.
Yeah.
He was like, fine, I guess I'll go make $1 billion movie about it. And then the Odyssey's got to be the same story, right? He's like, he's got to be talking to his kids and they're like, we don't know about that. All right, well, I guess I'll go make a movie about it.
Yes, exactly.
I can't wait till we get the Christopher Nolan movie about like how to open a checking account.
Exactly. How to balance your check, how to do your taxes, all of that stuff.
Give it to me.
The Accountant 3.
Yeah, he is I'm a huge the catalog is not even for me. I don't like every Christopher Nolan movie, but like the way that some people have decided like we all have to respect Steven Spielberg now because he's Are you one of these people? Is this your zone where you're like, we got to respect the old master? Are you that kind of person with Spielberg?
Not necessarily. Again, talking about the different avenues that creatives go down, sort of like you're saying with King, the different genres. Speaking of genres, I think he's made almost every type of genre other than like a Western or a horror. In terms of,
I do have to quibble here with the film Jaws. Might be a horror film.
It could be. Yeah, the closest thing he has come to making horror. You're correct. And just in terms of film being ostensibly a visual medium, a visual thing that you watch. One of the best blockers ever to do it. I definitely got to appreciate him on that front. But I'm not, I'm not a Spielberg. Whatever the word is, like I don't think of him as an idol. So no, I just turned 40. So growing up in the early 90s, Jurassic Park was a huge part of my life. And E.T., I went back and watched it. Yeah, sure. Oh, yeah. I was
the Color Purple.
I was 8 years old.
I'm just naming all the movies no one talks about.
Exactly. So watching 1941 as a child.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. Didn't he do the sequel too? Did he not?
I think he did. I think he might have.
He wrote or didn't direct.
Yeah. So no, I don't have like I don't genuflect at the altar of Spielberg is the way I would not put that. So, but yeah, I enjoy his films. What is your take on Spielberg?
I think he's like I think he is like perfectly middle of the road. Yeah. I mean, part of the issue is like you go like take graduate classes in film studies, you know what I mean, for half a decade or something.
Yeah.
And like Spielberg's the enemy, right? Like he's the guy who comes along, he crushes basically all diversity in American cinema.
Yeah.
You know, like you gotta look like Spielberg or it's not good enough, right?
Yeah.
So like all of that like weird popular filmmaking before new Hollywood comes along, and then the blockbuster era before that, right? Like the world gets really flat. And part of the reason why it wasn't so flat before is that the the industry was like in its death throes, right? Like there is a way that Spielberg and the rest of those people like they save Hollywood, right? But they do it in such a way that like it eliminates a lot of the weird workaday nature of so much of what came before. And so like, you know, you come out of that context and you're like, yeah, I get like it does a lot of the movies look good, you know, and are interesting. But guess what? A lot of movies look good and are interesting, right? And then we would never talk about it. And then like he gets so much press, right? So you end up with this kind of like defiant thing about Spielberg, you know, coming out of that context, or I do. And then like you emerge into a world 10 years later where everyone is like, and of course, you know, he's Geppetto over there, right? He's like our old man we must respect because he's a master of the craft. Look at these wonderful little boys he made. You know, like, I don't know. He's the guy who made 1941, right? Like, he's still that guy. He made Hook, a notoriously bad movie.
Yeah,
that's right. I'm gunning for all the listeners of the show.
Yes, no, that was
heel turn at the end on hating Hook.
My cohorts, my generation generally has a pretty high praise for that movie. But I went back and watched it a couple of years ago and I thought that it was perfectly fine, perfectly cromulent film. But having come away from reading The Last Kings of Hollywood to put in perspective again with him and Coppola, it really it's such an interesting book. I recommend you reading it, or anyone listening, check it out, because it is such an interesting examination of, like you said, Spielberg is the guy who's sort of put out such, people just love this blockbusters and people flock to the movies because of him. And it's such an interesting view of him coming up behind him, because he was, he's much younger, as most people know, than Coppola and even Lucas. So he was playing catch up. And I think a lot of those guys, it's such an interesting case of becoming everything you hated, coming into the Hollywood system and wanting to do something different, wanting to make interesting movies and tell interesting stories, and just getting stuck with what Coppola at the time. And it's really interesting to think of it this way, where Coppola was saying that he didn't want to make Godfather because even at the time it was considered, this pulpy airport beach read. And he just made that one, and then he really wanted to make Apocalypse Now as soon as possible and try to get Lucas to make it. But again, it's just interesting to think about how they were trying to do something different than the studios, and eventually wrapped around and became exactly what they wanted to destroy. So I think that was just in general, talking about how they came about and how they evolved over time and how they kind of fell a lot in a way fell into what they became, but in another way decided to become what they became. So I think it's just it's kind of heartbreaking, but also not, because they're all worth $1 billion. So
well, it's heartbreaking to me because like I just read fairly recently like a book of interviews with Robert Altman, who's like, I'm not like an Altman completionist or anything, but like I think I've thought that everything was interesting. I've yet to watch an Altman where I thought it was a total bust. You know what I mean? Like a fascinating guy. And part of his deal was like trying to keep doing the thing that he was doing and make it economically feasible. So he kept like making extended editions of his movies and extended cuts of his movies so that he could attempt to sell them to TV as multi-night events. So it's like, what if Peter Jackson did the Two Towers extended edition, but it was only on ABC, you know what I mean, and showed in reruns?
Yeah.
And those things, it doesn't seem to me that ever worked out. And part of it is like he's being crushed by his next door neighbor, right? Like, why would you ever, like he stays fully independent for the most part. He is making these movies with different revenue streams in mind so that he can stay financing. And that's something that, Dino De Laurentiis was very successful with in the 70s and 80s, all these different people, right? So all the independents are doing that. And like at the end of the day, the alliance between people like Spielberg, that cohort, And the traditional studios, they're just able to outcompete and stomp them out, right? By using like post Reagan vertical integration, right? Like as all those protections go away. And that economic hammer, it's just, I think I just have like a complicated, I can't turn that off with Spielberg. And what's, I guess, really interesting is I'm a huge Chris Nolan fan who has all the exact same issues. Like, there's not a single thing I just said about Steven Spielberg that's not true about Christopher Nolan. But I think the movies look better. like it's enough to carry me over.
Yeah, you're saying Nolan's movies look better than Spielberg?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I think he's the stylist I want Spielberg to be. You know, and like, you know, you can't have a Chris Nolan without Steven Spielberg. I get that, but like he is the culmination of the form to me of like, if he is the last person to make, if he closes the door of the blockbuster on his way out and turns the lights off, I'll be okay with it.
Right.
And after that, we're just watching 35-second YouTube shorts or whatever for the rest of our lives. That'll be fine. I'll take it.
Right. Yes. I do want to let you go, but also say that one of the best things I've seen this year so far is called The Furious. I think I've heard you mention that you like action movies, martial arts movies.
Yeah.
Furious is probably one of the best martial arts movies I've seen in a very long time, if ever. I don't want to be too hyperbolic about it, but it is from some of the same folks that did the Raid movies, and it is some of the best action filmmaking I've seen in a very long time.
Yeah, it's got the same fight coordinator, maybe.
Yes, I believe so. So
cool. Is it on streaming yet? Can I watch it? It looks like I can.
Yes, I believe it's on one of those VOD type things, PVOD type things. So highly recommend checking that out. So Cameron, thank you very much for taking the time to come on.
Absolutely, thanks for having me.
Yeah, all your stuff can be found anywhere you get your podcast, Pocket Cast, Spotify. A little hubbub with the Spotify algorithm that the Spotify overlords were like, you guys are talking too much. You were taking paragraphs and passages out of Lord of the Rings, and we can't have that. I thought that was, I understand that's probably annoying to you, but I thought it was hilarious.
You'll get to hear me read. You'll get to hear me read from the explanation/apology that we've received.
Oh, okay. I can't wait.
That might not go. That might be a thing that only exists on this episode and it never comes up on the actual show. Well, maybe I need to, consider. But yes, we have received formal communication from Spotify about this because we were making an illegal audiobook.
Yeah, I thought that was just in the what do you call it? The era of just algorithms scraping things for content and spitting it back out as if it was self-created. And Spotify was like, you said a thing that was already written down, and we actually own that. I don't know if you know this, but we have those audiobooks. So we own those words, not just the book itself, but those words in those order. Nobody else can actually say in any other form. Sorry.
Yeah. Evil
stuff. So again, thank you, Cameron. And this has been Midnight Film Society, and we will catch you next time.